Hey guys, just wanted to talk to you today about just having just amazing conversations at any time with anybody, and how can that really affect your life at a completely different stage? Because conversations are common and they're every day. So what studies indicate is we have about 27 conversations per day at 10 minutes of length per conversation. So really think about that in terms of the next time you're having a conversation, that this is one of the 27 conversations I'm going to have per day. Then if you kind of do the math, it'll give you about 189 conversations per week, and then 756 conversations per month. And if you do that over a year, that's 9,072 conversations. So if you really think about that, conversations dictate our relationships. So if you want to have great relationships, have great conversations. And this is the way I'm going to give you the mechanism of a way to do that. So, and I'm going to give you this analogy of a goldsmith. A blacksmith. A blacksmith, what do? They actually fashion metal to make it something beautiful. And you got to be able to fashion your relationships to make them something beautiful. And here's how it works. So what a blacksmith does is they add heat to metal to actually shape it. I want you to think of the metal as the actual relationship, and I want you to think of the heat as conflict within the conversation. That has to be sometimes dialed up, or sometimes it has to be dialed down, passive or aggressive. And when you really think about that, there's two components. You got to learn how to go towards conflict, but then how to mend conflict. And I'll take you through both. The first part is learning how to go towards conflict, but you got to have the courage to actually do that. And a lot of us, sometimes we hold things in thinking that we're going to be okay at the end of the day, and I'm just a nice person. No, it doesn't work that way, because you're sabotaging the relationship anyway. Because now what you're going to do is you're going to hold on to resentment in your heart. From there, actually starts, I'll give you the equation. It starts with blame. From blame, anger does not exist without blame. So then you hold anger in your heart because you're blaming. Then number two is when you actually start blaming, you get to a point where it turns into resentment. And from resentment, it turns into hatred. It crystallizes into hatred into your heart. And ultimately, you're going to ruin the relationship anyway. So being passive does not work. And I'm going to show you how that works within the analogy of a blacksmith. And sometimes we're too aggressive. We're too much. We're too angry. And we put on too much heat within a conversation. And let me show you how that works within the analogy. So ultimately, if you think of the relationship as the metal you're trying to shape into a beautiful sword, and sometimes you have to go towards conflict. Now, let's say we have the courage to actually, which is do the first part, which is go towards conflict. Let's say you could do that and you start going towards conflict. What do you have to do? You have to add on the right amount of heat, meaning you have to learn how to put that. If you go too far, here's what happens. If you go too far and you're too angry, you're going to put on too much heat. If you put on too much heat, what happens to the metal? It actually disfigures it. You're changing the composition of the actual relationship in the metal. So you got to be very careful not to go too far. Now, if you're too passive and you don't put on enough heat, what happens? You're not going to be able to shape the relationship at all, because you're not letting people know what you truly think. Now, from there, when you learn how to do that properly and you just add on just enough heat to the conversation where you can go towards conflict, tell people what you think in a respectful manner, but you let them know where your positions are, and you go towards that, and you're not afraid to do it. Let's say you do feel a little bit of tenseness to you, but it's okay. But you're actually letting people where your lines are. What makes you uncomfortable when somebody's saying something to you? You're actually now start moving towards conflict. Now, when you start moving towards conflict, it's not enough just to kind of say, okay, you know what, I'm just going to do this right. You got to learn and be very tactical in your mind to be able to mend conflict properly. And here's how you do it. And from there, if you just kind of look at yourself, say, okay, you know what, I'm going to just put on just enough heat. If I'm too passive, I'm going to start stepping into the zone of rejecting people at a higher level, just little by little. I don't go way too far, okay? You got to learn that every situation has its own kind of heat that needs to be added. Then from there, once you learn how to do that part of it, then you actually put the sword or the metal in cold water. That's mending conflict. And what happens when you do that? What happens when you actually do that? Here's what happens. The metal actually becomes stronger because the molecules become more dense within the steel. So it's very important that you understand both skill sets, going towards conflict and mending conflict. When you do that, you can create a beautiful relationship with anybody. And sometimes within different situations with the same person, sometimes you have to be passive. So you have to learn that gauge of knowing when to be passive and when to be aggressive even, and sometimes assertive. So you gotta learn how to do that and knowing that both sides are needed. And some of us, we sit on we're inclined to be more passive, and some of us, we're inclined to be more aggressive. So you gotta learn how to dial that in. And once you do that, then you gotta learn how to mend that conflict as well. So I hope that helps, and try it the next time you're actually in the conversations that you're in, one of the 127 conversations you're gonna be in every day. So try that, and you know what? I hope that helps you.